What is up, everybody, and welcome to my review of episode 3 of The Last of Us, titled Long, Long Time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. This is the episode that I've been most anxious to get everybody to see and to discuss it with all of you, because this is the one that I was talking about in my spoiler-free season review, where I said that this is probably going to be the most divisive episode of the season. I could see people saying this is the best episode of the season. I could see people saying this is their least favorite of the season. I could see others getting a lot of value out of the themes and the things they're exploring in this one, and I could see others getting really upset that it is easily the biggest deviation from the video game source material. And so I imagine that there was going to be a lot of different varying opinions, and we'll see as the night goes on whether or not that's true or not. But for me, I really did enjoy this episode. I appreciated the fact that it was wildly different than the game, because I think that it adds something in replacement for what it takes away. And as far as the action sequences of Bill's Town, I think it gives you a lot more character depth. It gets you a lot more emotion for sure. And so I really appreciated this as a counterpoint to the video game. So for those that have not actually played the game, the way that the Bill and Frank storyline goes down in the Last of Us video game is that you have this whole segment of this whole chapter called Bill's Town. And it's the same exact spot that it is in the story of the show, to where Tess has given her life and now it's Joel and Ellie off on themselves, and he's trying to get a car to get further down the country to get Ellie where she needs to go. And Bill is the person that he goes to get this car because he owes him a favor. And so you get to Bill's Town, and it's exactly like portrayed in the TV show, where it's ridden with traps, it's isolated, it's literally his own town, where nobody else is allowed to be inside.
Jesus!
Whoa. What the hell was that?
That would be one of Bill's traps.
And you have to navigate through these traps. Eventually you get into a sticky situation and Bill finds you, and Bill is an absolute asshole in the game. He is not a friendly person. He's not really a likable character in any way. He is so hardened and bitter of this new world and just surviving that he has lost all humanity.
Ellie. Hey, what are you... Joel?
Bill!
What are you doing?
Bill!
Let me go.
Turn around and get on your knees.
Just calm down a second.
Turn around.
All right.
And get on your knees. Don't test me.
Just take it easy.
Any bites? Oh. Anything sprouting?
Oh, God damn it, I'm clean!
He doesn't want human interaction. He doesn't want friendships. He doesn't want trading partners. He really does not get along with Ellie at all in the video game. And Frank is not a character that you ever get to meet or interact with. Essentially, you get through this entire segment of the game of Bill's Town, where you go through these trap-ridden areas, you go through a school, you get introduced to a form of infected that has not been introduced in the show yet, so I won't talk too much on it, but there's one of the cooler segments as far as gameplay in Bill's Town in the actual school gymnasium that I imagine is probably the sequence that people are going to be most upset was not translated directly into the show. But like most things in the show, I'll say they replace it with something that's pretty fucking awesome. So I think that you'll have your patience rewarded if you're not too fond of the fact that you didn't get to meet the bloater in the high school. And once you make it through the school, you get to this house where there is a working vehicle, and as they are getting everything together, Bill and Joel start to argue, and all of a sudden they see this body hanging from the ceiling. And Bill gets startled and just stops talking. And it's Frank. It's Frank's body.
Tell Tess that she can take this job.
Don't you bring Tess
She
into
can
this.
shove it right
It
up
has nothing
her
to do with... Jesus. What, you know this guy or something?
Frank.
Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner.
All he really says is that's my partner. And if you take the time to go throughout the house and you find all of the collectibles like I always did, and you'll find this note, it's a suicide note from Frank, and it colors their relationship basically in the opposite way that the show does. Where the show, they're very in love, and in the video game, you find this note to where Frank essentially says, "You're the most miserable person, I hated being around you," and in a way almost blames Bill for his suicide in a way. That's how I always took it. And then you also have the option to give that note to Bill if you want.
Bill, I found this in there, and I figured you should have it.
Well, that's how you feel. Well, fuck you too, Frank. Fucking idiot.
And that is all that you get in the video game. That is the only explanation of Bill and Frank's relationship, is that that's his partner. There is a not so subtle hint that they were gay lovers, and they were, it was not a good relationship. And so you leave Bill just as hardened, just as pissed off, and just as miserable of a human as he was when you met him, and then you go on through the rest of the game. And the episode of The Last of Us TV series decided to take a gigantic pivot and completely get rid of all of the gameplay sequences regarding Bill's town, completely get rid of the exploration of the school, get rid of the bloater introduction, get rid of any scenes with Ellie and Bill, get rid of any modern scenes with Joel and Bill or Frank, and just focus on the relationship between Bill and Frank, and focus on what it means to survive. And that was the biggest thing that I got out of this episode that I thought was really valuable. Was it's one of the better episodes of the series to explore what it means to survive, what it means to be human in this new world. Is it enough just to live to the next day? Is it enough to just keep checking off days on the calendar? I survived another 24 hours. Or is it better to actually have value to the life that you're continuing to have in this post-apocalyptic world? And that's what they explore through this relationship. So the episode kicks off, you get the little bit that you get with Joel and Ellie, to where they are continuing on their trek alone. They end up in this little convenience store where Joel has buried some supplies, and Ellie finds this Mortal Kombat 2 machine. And in the video game, it wasn't Mortal Kombat 2, it was some other fictional video game, but it's the same sequence where she's talking about, oh my God, I've heard about this. And she talks about this arcade game as if it's this mythological thing.
Oh, look at that.
Would you play this before?
No. But I had a friend that knew everything about this game.
Continuing to flesh out that world that children and teenagers like her have never experienced all of the things that we did. Cars, TV shows, video games, restaurants. And so she starts geeking out about Mortal Kombat 2 and talking about the Melina kill, the fatality, all the while Joel's just doing his thing. She sneaks off by herself, finds an infected, and stabs him with her knife, which, again, just a little bit coloring of her desire to be out in the world. Just the way in the first episode when Joel's beating the shit out of that guy and she kind of looks and is almost like intrigued, like, whoa, this is something that I want to experience. And so that is really all you get. They have another conversation about quarantine zones where they see these bodies off in this ditch, and she asks Joel, like, what happened on Outbreak Day? And he starts to tell her these stories about how quarantine zones, they had a capacity, and so if they found survivors and didn't have room for them, they would just kill them, because it's better to have dead people than, undead people. And so that, again, continues to flesh out how horrific this post-apocalyptic world is, where the first two episodes used flashbacks and used other spots in the world, coloring out the story that way to kind of build that. This one just kind of gives a story from Joel and immediately kind of transitions into Outbreak Day with the quarantine zone people that eventually become the bodies that they found getting loaded up into these trucks. And then Bill is in the basement waiting for the whole town to be cleared out so that he can wall it all off himself. And I love that sequence where it shows him just systematically turn everything back on and, turning on the power and turn on the water and starting to build fences. And it was cool seeing all the little things, like systematically what you would have to do to actually make Bill's town. And not too long after that, he first encounters Frank in this hole, to where he's got all these traps, he's got these alarms, he's been surviving by himself for a period of time, and finds Frank in this hole. And very quickly you see the difference in personality between them, to where Bill is a survivalist, but he's also kind of socially awkward, which kind of fits, the fact that he wants to be by himself because he's never really, I assume, meshed very well with other people. And Frank immediately is very outgoing and very expressive. And once he eventually kind of negotiates his way, hey, just give me a hot meal, don't send me back out there. And kind of appeals to the little bit of a tender heart that Bill has that was not present in the video game whatsoever. And it starts to begin their relationship to where he showers, and like anybody would, he would be just enamored with hot water and soap. He has this amazing dinner, and starts to play on the piano and fucks it up a little bit. And Bill's like, get the hell out of the way. This is how you do Linda Ronstadt, bitch. And what I thought was intriguing, at least I had this experience, I don't know about anybody else, is that as it starts to introduce hints that Frank has an attraction to Bill, I almost thought that because of the context that I had in the video game, that it was a very ill-fated relationship. I almost thought that Frank was pretending to be gay, just to have shelter, to be able to stay here, to be able to have hot meals and hot water and not have to go back out into the woods. That's where I thought it was heading. So whenever he starts to kind of seduce Bill, and Bill, very awkward, probably a virgin, or at least never been with a man before, is very awkward, continuing that socially awkward thing that Nick Offerman brings to the character really well. And they get in bed, and he's basically like, in a way, offering a blowjob to like, I'm going to suck your dick, and then you're going to let me stay here for a couple of days. Cool? Cool.
You son of a bitch, I'm in.
But then they get into a series of flash forwards, and so that initial theory that I had that he was just pretending is, kaput pretty soon. And that would have been an intriguing direction to go, but not nearly as heartwarming, for sure. But so he goes forward in time. They've been together for a while, and you have Frank that now wants to start decorating this town. He wants to start improving it. He wants to take pride in their town. And Bill's like, fuck that. We're going to keep all these materials for when we need them. We're not going to use paint for something to look aesthetically pleasing. We're not going to use gas for this. We're not going to use any of these supplies. And so you have that survivalist side that just wants to make it to the next day, that this is all for making it to tomorrow. And then you have Frank's side that really just wants to live in the now, that wants to enjoy his life. Whether or not there's monsters all over the place, he wants to be able to enjoy the fact that he's still breathing. And that's the challenge that these two characters bring to each other that I thought was really interesting, the way that they portrayed their relationship in this episode, more so with the challenge being on Bill. And you get to know that even more whenever they start to introduce Joel and Tess. I love the line where they're arguing and Bill's finally starting to bend a little bit, and he's like, oh, and by the way, I've been talking to some people, and walks away, and Bill's like, you what? And so you get a younger Joel, a younger Tess that have, putting out feelers, trying to get people to trade with, trying to get some contacts outside of the Boston quarantine zone. And Frank is just like treating them like guests in his house. Like, come on, we're going to treat you to dinner. I'm going to show you inside. I'm going to show you how I'm decorating everything. And Bill's just sitting there at the dinner table with his fucking gun cocked and ready. And I like the little bit of bonding that we get between Joel and Bill, to where they understand each other. Joel understands. He's like, I get it. Like, if this was my town, I'd probably be the same exact way. Like, it's cool. So that was interesting, because that's really the only color of their relationship that you get in the episode, to where the game, I mean, you understand that they've traded with each other for a while, but Joel just knows that Bill is who Bill is. And Bill doesn't really seem to like Joel all that much, and just begrudgingly helps him because he owes him a favor. What that favor is, what he did to earn that favor, we don't know. But I like the way that they had this understanding between each other. And the episode progresses further to the point where Bill and Frank are now pretty old men. And it introduces the fact that Frank is dying of cancer. And so it comes to a point to where it's going to have the same tragic end for these two characters, but in a beautiful way. Not in the really fucked up way that was in the video game, or at least what you could presume happened. You only get a little bit of context. You have to kind of fill it all in yourself, what happened between these two. But you have this last day to where, they show what their lives are like. They show that they have continued to prosper. They've had raiders a couple of times. There was a raider sequence in the middle of the episode too, but they have survived and they have stuck with each other. And you have this final day to where Frank is like, I'm done. I'm tired of rotting away. I can't enjoy my life anymore. Continuing to hammer home that whole theme there, to where Frank wants the value of life, not the quantity of life. And it does it in a really nice way, to where you don't exactly know if he has completely changed Bill or not. Because obviously Bill's upset to hear this, and he starts to do all the things that Frank wants him to do, give him a really nice day. They're going to go and go to the little shop that he has, and he's going to make him a nice dinner. He's going to pour him wine. He's going to put a lethal amount of this medication in there, and he's going to go to sleep holding his lover and pass away in a sleep. And I saw it coming. but I still thought it was very effective and tear-jerking when you have that final dinner and Bill crushes up all the medicine, puts it inside of his wine glass, lets Frank drink it. He chugs down his glass, and Frank just looks and knows, and he's like, you already put all that medicine in the bottle, didn't you? And he goes, yeah. And that is the moment that you realize that Bill has been changed, and Bill has come around to the thinking of Frank and is no longer worried about, I've got to survive till tomorrow. I've got to survive till next week. I've got to survive till next month, next year. And he realizes it's about the quality of life. It's about what you do with the days that you have earned and that you've been able to survive. And so when he realizes that without Frank, there's no reason to survive, that there's nothing else to fight for, there's nothing else to struggle for, it was a really nice revelation, and it was a nice counterpoint for the character that we found in the video game that would have never done that. And so, but the performances between the two actors, especially Nick Offerman, who I've never seen him do anything like this, so I was more focused on him. He's usually a comedic guy. I thought that it was a really nice, sweet, bittersweet, tragic story. And the fact that it kind of spent an entire episode just focusing on that theme, the quality of life versus the quantity of life. It's a really interesting discussion, and it's something it's a really important thing to have that counterpoint in the show, because where things are going to continue to go for Joel and Ellie, that is going to be challenged. That's going to be challenged again throughout the story. When quantity of life versus quality of life. Is it best to have the people that you love, or is it best just to survive to the next day? And so I really appreciated what they did in the episode using those two characters. And then eventually you get back to Joel and Ellie. They have now reached Bill's town, but it's been weeks, maybe even months after they have committed suicide. And so all the last dinner is sitting there rotten, the house smells, the door is locked in the bedroom where they have died. And I really liked the letter that Ellie finds, to where she reads it and she tells Joel what it says. And it almost felt more like Bill in the video game with his sense of humor, to where he's like, I guess you're our friend, but I never really liked you. And, everything should be safe in the town. And if anybody got in, they probably died in my traps. He, or however he wrote it in the note. I thought that was really funny. And the fact that she finds a note, too, is something that's straight out of the video game. It's just like finding Frank's suicide note in the video game. So again, subtle things that just kind of recreate that experience you have in The Last of Us. And you also get the two, probably the most iconic outfits. I don't know if you can call them iconic, but the most recognizable outfits for Joel and Ellie whenever they shower and they clean up. And Joel gets that signature, green flannel long sleeve shirt, and Ellie gets the shirt and the outfit that she's wearing. That's kind of the more traditional look that you have for those two characters. At least that's the look that I think of when I think of those two characters. So again, continuing on the little tiny bit of fan service, those outfits mean nothing to anybody that is watching the show and has never experienced the video game. If you're a lifelong fan like I have been, then you're looking at it and you're going, damn, there it is. There's the flannel. And going back to Frank's note for a moment, I think that his words did not only a great job at propelling the story forward and almost propelling the character of Joel forward a little bit, which is funny because he doesn't do anything to actually earn this little bit of character growth, but it also foreshadows where the story is eventually going. And you have this line where he says, our purpose on this earth is to protect those that we love, and God help anybody that stands in our way. And he's talking about Tess. And there's even a moment where he says Tess, and Joel doesn't really react too much. Ellie won't say the word. And so it's still a sore spot for him. But what he is describing is what's going to become the relationship for Joel and Ellie. And again, a really good way. It's a nice breather of an episode from the first two episodes and all the crazy events and, the jam-packed intro episode, the pilot, and then the clicker interactions and Tess's sacrifice in episode 2. This is a nice breather to kind of let the dust settle for a moment before we go through the rest of this insane story and really explore the theme of life and value and love that is so integral to this story and to these characters, and let the love story of Bill and Frank progress forward the character interactions, the character growth of especially Joel, but Ellie, for what is going to transpire in the next 6 episodes. So again, I'm a huge fan of episode 3. I loved what they did here. I'm not going to go as far as to say I prefer it to the video game, because I absolutely love Bill's Town in the game. It's one of my favorite segments. So I'm very curious to see where everybody has landed on this one. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you bored? Were you enamored with what went on? Do you wish that you could spend more time with Bill and Frank? Or you were just ready to get back to Joel and Ellie? Let me know all your thoughts, guys, and whether or not you're experiencing the show without the context of the video game and what you thought of the episode, or if you are a huge fan of the game and what you thought of the episode and what was different. So let me know all that down in the comment section, and we will discuss it. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for the playlist of all of my reviews, all my coverage on The Last of Us series so far. I'm also going to put my review of The Last of Us Part 1 and a link to my video game channel. Please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of my coverage of the show, including tomorrow's live stream with Zach Pope and Uncle Sean. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.